Hey, how's everyone doing out there? How you doing, Mikela? Sorry I dropped you onto the screen there. I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. My name is Rosendo from MLH, and we are really excited to have all of you folks from the MLH community coming to join us to listen to a talk from someone who espouses many years of wisdom with regards to the tech industry, and also, over here we also like to highlight the many diverse voices that come from the community as well. So I think y'all are really in for a very special treat. What I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna hide that banner because we are already underway. It's not 5 minutes any longer, so the wait is done. Once again, my name is Rosendo from MLH. I'm just gonna be here in the background hanging out while Michaela goes ahead and does her thing and lets y'all a little bit about how to make it in tech. So without any further ado, I'll go ahead and hand it off to you, Michaela.
Hi, yes. So, welcome. I am really excited to be speaking with you all today. Even though it's virtual, I want to make this as personal as possible. So, in the chat, feel free to drop an emoji or a word on how you're feeling and where you're watching from as I give an introduction on who I am. So, today I'll be talking about the imposter syndrome and confidence building. So, I am Mikela Wright. I'm a software engineering manager at Capital One, currently in enterprise data and machine learning. I am in Virginia right now, and it is a nice, beautiful day. I see some folks from Boston. Hey, Boston. I am a mentorship director. I'm actually the director for two organizations now within Capital One, which is our Blacks in Tech organization and our Women in Tech organization. I joined Capital One as a college hire many years ago. I graduated from Virginia Tech with an industrial and systems engineering degree and a minor in business. Throughout my tech career, I am now hitting 11 years. I said that I would never code before I entered tech. And I'll walk through my journey in this presentation to say, how in the world did I go from saying that I would never code, being an oxymoron that's thriving and never see herself in another industry aside from tech? So I see Minnesota. I see some folks from India. Really excited to see folks watching from all around. If you have questions as I go throughout the presentation, please put them inside of the chat, and I'll take moments throughout the presentation to take a break, and then at the end I'll address questions, as many as we can. So, what is our objective? So, after this session, the goal is for you to be able to identify the imposter syndrome and its patterns, use the Aspire method to conquer the imposter syndrome, apply the Aspire method, pass it forward, and keep it going. So, imposter syndrome. Before I knew what the imposter syndrome was or what it even meant, I was experiencing things of the self doubt throughout my journey. So I'll briefly walk to how did I go from I would never code to being 11 years and an advocate to empower others to stay in tech and be in tech. I'm from a city, Portsmouth, Virginia, and it's a very small town. And growing up in high school, it was a breeze for me. I was one of the top scholars, class president, and in this space, there wasn't a lot of changes that I had to really face because I felt comfortable in my environment. My decision to go to Virginia Tech was a unique one. I wanted to explore engineering, and I knew that I wanted to solve problems. But it was at Virginia Tech. That was the first time that I ever really experienced the question of, wait a minute, am I in the right place? And had a magnifying glass on my mistakes, questioning my judgment. And one of the prime factors of me solidifying that tech or coding was not for me was in my first intro to computer science class. So I was a general engineering major freshman year, and that's pretty typical when you're entering any type of engineering discipline. And in this general year, you have to take each major discipline, at least one intro course. So I had an intro to computer science course. In that course, I had to try really hard. And I've already had the inkling that it was something that I was interested in, but not passionate about. And that trying very hard made me realize, maybe it's not a fit for me. Maybe it's something that is not naturally for me to be a part of. So I pushed tech in the back and I focused on industrial and systems engineering. I enjoyed it. I thrived and I struggled still a bit questioning if I chose the right discipline because I had to try a lot harder to be successful academically than I did in high school. I didn't have to study in high school. So things that I had to really apply for when I went to college made me really question if I made the right decision. So, how did I go from industrial systems engineering into information technology slash software engineering? So, it was at the end of my senior year, I had a co-op, and that co-op experience was with a major manufacturing company. I had to wear a hard hat. I was solving complex problems, but there was something inside of me that really said, "I'm not comfortable in this environment. I want to solve problems, but not in this space." So I decided to focus on the systems piece and jumped into information technology or technology. And I'm really feeling like an imposter being a non-computer science major in this field. So I was still adamant that I was not going to touch code, not going to touch it at all. So I found a sweet spot being a business systems analyst, which brokered in technology to understand what the business wanted and transfer it and work with developers so we can build it out. But there came a point in time where I had to make a choice. I couldn't tote the line of solving the problems but not touching or being in deep with software engineering. So I jumped in and made the decision that I was going to be a software engineer. And throughout my career, even though I was successful in executing projects, I received good feedback and opportunities from my peers. I still felt like that end picture of, are they going to find out that I'm not a computer science major, or don't know what this technology is? And so throughout this phase, I realized this visual that I'm showing, this downward facing triangle shows the major pieces of the story of how did I get here and me questioning, am I the right fit for the job? So when I first got into Virginia Tech, the minority background the majority's background versus my background, uh, that's playing in my head. When I switched into technology, being a non-computer science major versus being a computer science major. And even now, me being a tech manager, but not necessarily a tech master. So I realized and came down to two things. One, there's a role that I have to execute or responsibilities that I have to execute. And then there's my experience. And the more that I compared the two, I realized that that impacts confidence. And that's when I did research and discovered the imposter syndrome. It'll creep in despite being excited about great opportunities and your past successes. So, what is the imposter syndrome? The imposter syndrome is an internal experience. It's feelings of inadequacy that persist despite evident success or even how others view you. This is not an official diagnosis for mental disorders, but is a very common term now that just faces that comparing yourself and assessing yourself to how you see others viewing you. So I want to take a moment. Um, have any of you all have agonized over some of the smallest mistakes? Just take a moment and think about it. Have any of you all attributed your success to luck or outside factors? Has anyone been very sensitive to constructive criticism, even if the space was open to say, hey, this is a safe space, constructive criticism? You were very sensitive to it and it just lingered in your mind. cause those wheels to turn. I love the chat going. Keep it up. Have any of you ever felt like you've been viewed as a phony, or you will be viewed as a phony if someone finds out that you're not the expert in this latest technology or on the project that you're assigned? And last, this is one that I really resonate with the most. Do you downplay your own expertise, even when you are, you have the most knowledge in that expertise? Do you downplay your expertise? So these are common questions, or if you answered yes to any of these are common themes of imposter syndrome. And I did even more research because I kept feeling this feeling and I wanted to solve it once and for all. Everyone's talking about it. We know what it is. We've heard about it, but let's try to combat this thing. So I discovered something called the 5 Patterns of Imposter Syndrome by Dr. Valerie Young. Dr. Valerie Young is an expert in imposter syndrome, and in her research, she narrowed it down to these 5 patterns: perfectionist, expert, natural genius, soloist, and superheroes. Now, this slide has a lot of words on it because I know virtually taking notes, screenshots are king these days. But I encourage you to let's look at each of these sections and then you'll see how they tie to those questions. So the perfectionists have high expectations. That means completing 99% of your goals feel like failure. We need to hit every single expectation how we expected it to go, or even better. So a trigger for imposter syndrome to creep in is a mistake. Mistakes feel like a lack of competency or ability. So then next we have the experts. Experts need to know every piece of information. I can relate to being that person that kept their hand down and I would only answer questions if I knew every piece of information or felt the most comfortable if I knew I will already solve or knock out this project. For an expert, being uncomfortable with unknowns, that plays into them assessing their competence. Not knowing the answer is a trigger. It will make you feel like a phony or a fraud or question, is this an environment for you to thrive in? Natural genius. Natural genius, to compare it to tie these patterns to the journey that I shared, was what I experienced when I went from high school not studying and really having to try hard in computer science and some of my other engineering courses. Statistics, if you wanted to know, that was a pain, but I will not, that's a whole nother seminar on statistics. But the natural genius easily attain new skills with little to no effort. So if they have to try harder, they equate that to more effort means not good enough. More effort to learn this means maybe I'm not competent enough to belong, or I maybe found out that I'm not getting it as easy as others. So I may be found out to be a fraud. Soloists. Soloists, the name in itself, they need to accomplish things on their own to feel successful. Asking for help feels like failure. So anytime someone even adds a person to the project, or say, maybe you should add this, or you did not accomplish this on your own, that will trigger, OMG, I feel like a fraud. I couldn't do it by myself. And the imposter syndrome will creep in. And then superheroes. Superheroes is very interesting because I felt like superheroes have a theme of all of the previous 4. But the unique thing about superheroes is that they push to work harder to prove their worth. So here's the difference. You can be ambitious. We can have all of the excitement to complete this project and stay up all night because we're just really jazzed and want to get it done. But the superhero pattern is showing up earlier, putting in extra hours to say, okay, I belong here. This is going to make me belong here because I'm outworking everyone else. And it's not really just standing on your own merit or just knowing that the work that you put in is still valid and valued. And the trigger for a superhero is that external validation or the little external validation or recognition after working harder and harder. So I rarely, from my personal experience, um, experienced the superheroes. I would say I experienced it the most when I first joined technology because I was just really hyper focused on getting things done and realized after an all nighter developing this program, the praise that I got, I don't know what type of praise I was, but it was just really minimal. And I was like, I guess me going this extra mile to finish it up really didn't make a difference on assessing my value to the team. So I gave a lot of information on what the imposter syndrome is. I've been seeing the chat go already with folks identifying. So let's just take a moment, reflect on all of the information, and even share if you identify with any of the patterns that I shared. As I bring up the patterns again, as we and look at the chat to see if you all identify with one or more of the patterns, I do want to call out that your experiences are not necessarily tied to only one of these patterns. What I came to find out is that based on the certain situations and scenarios, you could experience different patterns of imposter syndrome. For example, natural genius, when I first went into uh, Virginia Tech, uh, experts. Expert is a theme, and I'll dive into a use case later, is what I felt a lot of times in my tech career, especially when I took the jump to be completely in computer science, software engineering. So I see some superheroes. Um, Thank you all for sharing. Yeah, thank you for popping up. It all resonates. Thank you. And I love the advice. I see someone say, stop comparing yourself with others. Everyone has a different and unique path. So yeah, shout out to you. And that's very valid. Comparison can be dangerous, but the thing about it is know that even if you are quote unquote comparing, just know that 70%, at least 70% of people will experience the imposter syndrome at least once in their career. And this became more evident when I started hearing some of my other peers and when I started seeing people that I looked up to within technology and outside of technology question, like, I'll figure out if I can lead it, or I'm not even sure of how I got this position. And that made me realize, okay, this is more common than we think. And I think it's important for us to talk about it because research showed the more awareness around the subject and the more we realize that it's a common phenomenon, the less it can impact or negatively impact your journey. And I'm passionate about bringing more awareness, tactical awareness about imposter syndrome, because it's believed to hit minority groups even harder. And here's why. Let's say we're all focused on delivering a project or contributing to a project. Not only do we have to focus on, making sure that we feel we belong or we're contributing or have confidence in what we're delivering, within that you have a working culture or a school culture or a gender culture, or if the majority of your team is one demographic for the other, there are other ways that the imposter syndrome can impact you even outside of what you have to deliver or success to feel like you want to fit in. But the good news is we're in good company because even the great Albert Einstein experienced imposter syndrome. Here's a quote: the exaggerated esteem in which my life work is held makes me very ill at ease. I feel compelled to think of myself as an involuntary swindler. Now, I'm not sure which pattern this genius experienced, but it just really blows my mind and resonates at how internal the experience is, despite what you've accomplished and what how others see you. Another great mind that experienced the imposter syndrome is the great Maya Angelou, the acclaimed writer, poet, all a lot of accolades, but still identify with this syndrome. So back to this triangle, and how did I get into this seat talking about this, and pretty much been on a road show for the past couple of years. So I was tasked in a move to cloud effort to migrate several applications that were critical to the business from on-premise servers into the cloud. So in layman's terms, for those that may not, be aware of what the cloud is, and it's funny, I got a shirt on today. The cloud is just someone else's computer. So it's pretty much mega computers that my company owned, and we're migrating all of the data, all of the application interfaces, all of the security, making sure that we're moving everything into the cloud. Not for one application, but for several. When I was tasked with this, it came at a time where I was a software engineer and I moved out because I was running away from software engineering. I just knew that even though I was doing well, I felt like people have master's degrees in this. I know that I'm coding my little life away with this small little app that I'm doing, but will I be able to keep up? So I joined this new team that was still technical problems that I would have to solve. But the ironic thing is now I'm the lead data engineering, software engineering for this whole migration. So what did I do? I started saying, okay, I'm a data transformation and migration tech lead now versus me not really being new to data engineering. Cloud was not really popular in the company at the time. So not only did I not understand what the cloud was at the time, it was new within the company since we were just migrating there. Another layer of comparison for me. Okay, I just joined this team because I was trying to find different problems to solve where I didn't have to be hands on keyboard. And now I'm not only the applications to me of one application for the data, I have to know the data and understand the data for other applications. And I'm the newest member on the team at the time. And then this third, so clouds me versus cots me. So cots are commercial off the shelf products. And in technology, you'll realize some company have mixes of products that they've built in-house from the ground up, or products that you will purchase, so commercial products, and you will build technology or build services or apps around that. So I was more experienced in the cots. So knowing how to take an application, the term black box, and making it work how we need it to work. So I'm just comparing, saying, okay, we're going to have to build our pipelines. We're going to have to do all this. And at the time, my confidence went really, really down. But I knew that I can do it. And I was interested in it. So I didn't want to walk away. I didn't want to run away. So I did even more research. How can I get over this imposter syndrome feeling? So some of the things that they shared was talk to a coworker, ask them how you're doing, get feedback. So then that can level set. Okay, I'm not actually about to destroy the company. I'm doing well. Everyone, I'm not messing anything up. I'm doing great. Number two, write out your accomplishments. So at the time that writing out that I just had a successful migration for another team. I did X, Y, and Z, and just listed out my technical and leadership uh, accomplishments. That still wasn't enough. So I said, you know what? I want to problem solve this feeling. I want to really figure out once and for all, create some steps to combat imposter syndrome, because it's just like a cycle. You can ask someone how you're doing, or at least for me, I would ask someone, okay, how am I doing? Is everything going well? Is there anything else that I can contribute? And they're like, oh, it's awesome, great. But in my mind, I'm like, I could be doing more. I don't know as much as I should. And I fell into the expert pattern a lot in this project, and in some pieces of my leadership, of just leading brilliant minds to build great technology. So, what did I do? I decided to take the problem solving scientific method and come up with the Aspire method. So, earlier I shared that I noticed two things that I'll start doing. I'll look at the role or the responsibilities, and I will compare that with my experience at the time. And I realized I needed something to bridge the gap, because if you're interested in something, I empower you to follow your interest, follow your curiosity. Life is so fluid that you do not have to be fixed on one thing. So the Aspire method is a 6-step process to shift your mindset from being an imposter to being an asset. And I like this method because if the imposter syndrome is an internalized experience, a lot of the advice that I saw was external advice, like with me seeking external validation to kind of level set where I am. So with this, Aspire method is still an internal process. So what are the 6 steps? A, acknowledge how you feel. Don't run away from the feeling that, hey, I feel I'm not sure where I'm fitting in. These mistakes is having me question, should I continue? I'm downplaying my expertise. All of those other things that we talked about. After you acknowledge how you feel, let's shift to the positive. I'm very interested in this opportunity. This is a great learning experience. Those are some of the things that you'll think about when you shift to the positive. P, pinpoint the trigger. So we talked about the 5 triggers. And once you acknowledge how you feel, pinpoint the trigger. Figure out what's causing you to feel that way. Is it because you needed help? Is it because you needed more information, or you made a mistake? When you really dial it back and really assess and acknowledge how you feel, you'll be able to align it to one of those triggers. Once you align it to a trigger, I identify a solution. So if you identified and pinpoint the root cause of why you're feeling that way, let's come up with a solution. Um, and then next, you have R, reframe the mindset. So reframe the mindset is another mental shift. And the reason why I decided to put another mental shift, because yes, shift to the positive and then reframe the mindset to be positive sounds like similar steps. But I felt like it was important after you identify the solution to do another mental check. Because sometimes your solution can go ahead and start a whole nother cycle. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to reach out to this person. And so you just take a pause. This is the solution. I'm gonna reframe my mindset. And then E, let's execute the plan. So it wouldn't be fair if I didn't show an example of this. So here's the first example of the Aspire method. And I used that at the time for this project that I had to manage. So I acknowledge how I felt. I felt underqualified for such a high visibility and complex effort. And sometimes it's hard to admit I really felt underqualified. I was interacting at the time with people that were 2 levels and above. I had to come up with cyber. I had to come up with architecture. I had to work with data security SMEs. I had to understand what AWS. There were just so many different players that I felt underqualified, and I didn't feel like I had enough information to really succeed as confidently as I wanted to. Then I shift to the positive. this is a great professional and technical opportunity for me. This was career changing, and actually technology, technical growth would be through the roof because I'm learning the cloud. I'm migrating into the cloud. It's the best of both worlds. And I had a great track record for completing complex projects. So I just really had to shift to the positive to say I'm still interested in this, and this will be great when I complete it. So then I pinpointed the trigger. It was the lack of information. I felt underqualified, not because I was comparing myself to others per se, but it was just really because I just did not, it was so much information in different areas for me to learn. I had to know this, I had to be an expert in knowing how applications ran today. I had to be experts in understanding the best practices for data. And I had to be an expert at understanding what the future of the data would look like, what the infrastructure would look like for the applications, and partner with the teams that were moving the infrastructure to move the data. So, expert pattern fell into that hole. Identify a solution. Now, this seems like a no brainer to say, okay, if you don't know something, go and ask. But this was a really thought out plan. And I didn't use the words, I don't know. I used the words, I need to find out. And I set up time with SMEs. You'll see SMEs on the slide. That stands for subject matter expert. So I thought about everything that I wanted to know that would make me feel better. And I led and went into and that was my solution. I would go into these as more of an interview. And then I reframed my mindset again because at the time, as being a lead of something and being a manager, you may really feel like you have to be the master and the know-it-all of all things. But I reframed my mindset to say, learning is normal. This is something new. And as technologists and as innovators and problem solvers, we are doing things that haven't been done before in most cases. We are creating problems and facing scenarios that do not exist. So it's so important, and I'm especially I'm telling you all as the technologist as you are to give yourself grace in this industry and know that learning is normal. Learning is something new is a part of being a great tech professional. And then E, after I gave myself that come to yourself passionate pep talk, I met with my manager, shared my plan, and asked for contacts. So I was like, who do you recommend me to? I should reach out. I set up meetings with the stakeholders, and I showcased my plan on information gathering. I even branded it. That's kind of a different topic on how you can take some of your unknowns and then make it a whole effort. So it's our discovery phase. And that's how the Aspire method helped me push through this. And I went from feeling like an imposter or being found out that I didn't know, and I was an asset because I realized I was asking questions and I was setting up sessions and bringing up scenarios that others had questions about as well. So I'm gonna do a review and then we can do some Q&A. And if this and I'm really humbled and excited to be speaking with you all today. Uh, 5 patterns of imposter syndrome: perfectionists, experts, natural genius, soloists, superheroes. Imposter syndrome may persist throughout different scenarios. It may creep in when you didn't expect it. But the thing about imposter syndrome, I realize, is just we can combat it as long as we aspire through. Pinpoint, acknowledge how you feel, shift to the positive, pinpoint the trigger, identify the solution, reframe your mindset, execute a plan. And with that, I will take a moment and pause and also make an announcement that from a Capital One perspective, there's a lot of trainings and there's a lot of support in really asking these questions, creating mentorship. And I'm happy that me being passionate about this project, I was able to contribute the mentorship program and partner with a lot of great folks at Capital One. So I'll take a pause to answer any questions about imposter syndrome. I'll also take a pause and just make an announcement that Capital One is still, we are hiring for our technology development program, and we have someone from HR and recruiting that can answer questions. So if you have questions about, my Capital One journey, how did I transition, feel free to ask those. And so thank you all so much for your time. Feel free to visit our campus recruiting page. So that's the hyperlinks are there below. And you can connect with me on LinkedIn. And I also just started I created a web page for myself. It is www.mikelarwright.com/home. I didn't get to add it into the slides, but I will be hosting sessions on and workshops on the imposter syndrome and the Aspire method in the future. So if you are interested and want more, go to mikelarwright.com/home and you can sign up and stay in the loop there. So, with that being said, I will open it up for questions and see if anyone will answer. And I'm going to add into the comments. So, thank you for whoever typed that in. And /home, you may have to put home for it to show up. But yes, let's stay connected. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And I'm going to cue the person that is monitoring the chat. Let's see. Scrolling through. So while I'm waiting for questions to form, are there any light bulb moments or any areas of, wow, I didn't know this, that you learned? I'm really curious to see what stood out to you. All right, so we have something. So I relate most with perfectionist and expert. I still stroke. Oh, until my stroke, I was able to learn new skills with ease. Thank you for sharing. And just know, like, I always empower our interests and what comes naturally and innate in us to be curious. We can still go after it. So I empower you to use the Aspire method in those situations where you may feel like you fall into the perfectionist or the expert, and identify a solution. Any step towards progress, even if we title it as failure, is still progress. And that's one thing that I encourage everyone, including myself, to always remember that who says imposter syndrome can stop us from accomplishing what we want. You use those methods, and over time, you'll realize that you're problem solving just as fast as you're just sitting in the problem. So I'll go back to the Aspire method to show some of those, the summary, so you can just in your mind just know how to just use that effort there. So thank you for sharing. Yeah, so if there are any other questions, oh, I see one other one pop in. Perfectionist and natural genius for sure. I'm definitely not a genius. Well, even all I'm going to say is I just pulled up a quote that Albert Einstein said that he felt like an imposter. So you just might be Albert Einstein. I mean, he was a genius and still felt it. So we shall see. Prove that you're not a genius. Show us. Just kidding. But yes, I really appreciate the sharing. There was a lot of chat interaction and I appreciate the feedback. So without further ado, I will stop sharing my screen. And if there's any other announcements or I'm not sure how these events close out, but feel free to stay connected. And capital1careers.com if you're interested in exploring some opportunities there. And thank you so much. Oh, I see a question. Nice. Okay. Um, how do you prevent from ending up in a cycle where your solution to ask others or getting some external? Um, so one of the things that external validation that end up doubting. So one of the things that I'm currently doing research on and I'm finding is confidence and imposter syndrome may not be as directly related as possible. Um, if you are if your interest is very strong in this, always lean into why you're curious about it. Your curiosity and your why will overpower any of the other validation that you're seeking. And seek information versus validation. So there was a saying that with feedback that you receive, so let's say you want you're asking, you created something and it does require external feedback, and someone gives you feedback that you resonate with, and someone gives you some critical feedback that can cause you to question, like, okay, all right, well, fine, I'll go back to the drawing board. um, go back to your why and apply the feedback or the validation that resonate or that you can relate to, but do not let the feedback or the validation chip away at your interests. I'll give you an example of a scenario where I could have just spent my wheels over. In that intro to computer science class that I took, I was struggling with the concept, but I was still determined to pass the class. I went to office hours one day and asked the professor a question. And the professor at the time looked at me with a smug face and said, "Is this really your question? If this is your question, you'll be replaced by a computer one day." Okay. So I was like, okay, I'm not trying to code anyway. Um, but that external validation that I was seeking and that guidance that was a part of my plan, I didn't let that deter me from my overall goal and my overall why. So the best way to prevent a loop from happening is to really focus on that, reframe the mindset, and to just reflect back to your why, reflect back to how you got there, and just keep making iterative progress towards your goals. Did that make sense? Would love to know if that answered your question. Yeah, so this is
All
recorded.
right.
So thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Michaela. I just want to say thank you to everyone there. And it looks like Billy did respond and say that, the response that you provided was very helpful. So
Yes, that's
kudos there.
awesome. Thank you so much. Glad to help. And remember that third point is that now you know how to aspire through the imposter syndrome. You have to pass it on and spread the word and encourage others.
Absolutely. Always pay it forward. I just want to say thank you so much for joining us, Michaela, like sitting in the backstage. I was completely in awe, like with how much of what you were saying actually resonated with me personally. And I'm sure that the folks out there listening and watching felt the same way. Once again, visit Michaela's website, www.michaelawright.com/home. You could also fill out a survey about this workshop, and it's there in the comment section. I'm going to drop it in the screen here as well. Um, Leave us your feedback. Let Capital One know how great Michaela was and how great the content was and how helpful it was and relevant to you it was. So without any further ado, I think, as Mikela had mentioned, we do want to just wrap this up here. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And once again, Mikela, thank you so much for joining us and for espousing and leaving and dropping this knowledge on us and just like leaving us feeling so great after this talk. So,
No problem. Thank you so much. And feel free to remember to check out capital1careers.com as well for those opportunities within Capital One too. Thank you so much and have a great day, everybody.
Bye.